I'm Marcus Bennett, 28 years old, and I never imagined that attending my sister's wedding would become the catalyst for losing everything I thought I had. What started as a celebration of love turned into a public humiliation that exposed years of family dysfunction, resentment, and carefully hidden truths. But before I tell you about that devastating day, let me take you back to where it all began, to the streets of Portland, Oregon, where our family's story first took root. Portland in the late 1990s was a city of contrasts. While tech companies were beginning to boom in the Pacific Northwest, our family was barely scraping by. My parents, Robert Bennett and Linda Bennett, owned a struggling auto repair shop on the east side of town. The garage, Bennett's Auto Service, had been in our family for 2 generations, but by the time I came along, it was hemorrhaging money faster than oil from a cracked engine block. My sister, Amanda Walsh, was 9 years older than me, and from my earliest memories, she was the family's shining star. While I was still learning to tie my shoes, Amanda was already working multiple jobs to keep our family afloat. She started, at 14, taking a position at a local bookstore after school. By 15, she was waitressing on weekends at a busy diner downtown, coming home with her feet aching and her pockets filled with tip money that went straight into the family fund. I remember being 7 years old, sitting at our worn kitchen table watching Amanda count out crumpled bills and coins. "This should cover the electric bill," she'd say to Mom, her voice tired but never complaining. Mom would hug her, tears in her eyes, calling her our little angel. Dad would pat her shoulder gruffly, saying, "Don't know what we'd do without you, kiddo." Meanwhile, I got to be a kid. I played baseball in the summer, hung out with friends after school, and never once worried about where my next meal was coming from. Amanda made sure of that. She made sure I had new cleats when mine wore out, that I had a decent lunch to take to school, that our house stayed warm in the winter. She was 16 when she started tutoring other students for extra cash, 17 when she added a third job delivering newspapers before dawn. Looking back now, I can see how unfair it was, but at the time, it felt normal. Amanda was the responsible one, the capable one, the one who could handle anything. And I was the baby, the one everyone doted on, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. By the time I hit middle school, the pattern was firmly established. Amanda had graduated high school with honors and earned a full scholarship to Oregon State University. She was studying computer science, a field just beginning to explode with opportunity. But even with the scholarship covering tuition, she still sent money home, $300, sometimes $400 a month, to help with my expenses and the shop's mounting debts. I was 13 when I got my first real taste of what being the golden child meant. I'd made the school's varsity baseball team as an 8th grader, a big deal in our sports-obsessed town. Mom threw me a celebration dinner, inviting extended family and friends. Amanda drove 3 hours from college to attend, bringing me a new baseball glove that must have cost $150, money I later learned she'd saved from skipping meals for 2 weeks. "You're going to be amazing, Marcus," she said, hugging me tight. "I'm so proud of you." That same semester, Amanda made the dean's list for the 3rd time in a row. When she called to tell our parents, Dad said, "That's great, honey," and then immediately asked if she could send an extra $200 for new tires for the shop's tow truck. She did, without hesitation. The double standard should have been obvious, but I was too young and too caught up in my own world to notice. When I brought home a B- on a math test, Mom said, "That's okay, sweetie. Math is hard." When Amanda got anything less than an A, she'd apologize to our parents for not doing better. I started to expect special treatment. If I wanted new video games, Mom found the money. If I needed expensive baseball equipment, Dad figured it out, usually by calling Amanda and asking her to chip in. She always did. She always made it work, even when it meant taking on extra shifts at her campus job or eating ramen for weeks straight. High school was when I really started to change, though I wouldn't recognize it until years later. I was popular, good at sports, and coasted through my classes with minimal effort. I had a girlfriend, drove a decent car, bought by Amanda when I turned 16, and lived a life that felt charmed. My friends envied me. Teachers liked me. Life was easy. Amanda, meanwhile, had graduated college and landed a job as a software developer at a tech startup in Seattle. She was making $85,000 a year, a fortune compared to what our parents brought in from the struggling repair shop. She moved to Capitol Hill, got a small apartment, and continued to send money home. Now it was $600 a month, sometimes more. I was 17 when I asked her to buy me a new laptop for school. It was a top-of-the-line MacBook Pro, costing nearly $2,500. She didn't hesitate. "Of course, Marcus," she said over the phone. "Anything for my little brother." I barely thanked her, already thinking about which games I'd download first. Around that time, I started noticing things about Amanda that annoyed me. She'd come home for visits and talk about her job, about the projects she was working on, about her life in Seattle. To me, it sounded like bragging. "We get it, you're successful," I'd mutter under my breath. Mom would shoot me a look, but Dad would chuckle. "Amanda's always been a bit full of herself," he'd say, not loudly enough for her to hear, but loud enough for me to internalize. The truth was, I was jealous. Amanda had built something for herself, and I was still living in our parents' house, relying on her money to fund my comfortable teenage life. But instead of admiring her or trying to follow her example, I resented her. I convinced myself that her success came easily, that she'd somehow had it better than me, that she was showing off. When I graduated high school, my grades were mediocre, mostly B's and C's. I hadn't applied myself, hadn't pushed for scholarships like Amanda had. I got into Portland State University, a decent local school, but without any financial aid. The tuition was $12,000 a year. Mom and Dad looked stressed when the acceptance letter arrived. "We'll figure it out," Mom said, though her voice wavered. Amanda called that night. "I'll cover it," she said simply. "All of it. Tuition, books, living expenses. You just focus on your studies, Marcus." I should have been grateful. I should have recognized the incredible sacrifice she was making. $12,000 a year, plus another $800 a month for my rent and expenses, on top of the money she was still sending our parents. But instead, I felt entitled to it. Of course Amanda would pay. That's what she did. That's what she was for. College was supposed to be my chance to grow up, to figure out who I was, to become independent. Instead, it became 4 years of extended adolescence, funded entirely by my sister. I majored in business, a vague choice that didn't require too much effort, and spent more time partying than studying. My grades hovered around a 2.5 GPA, enough to stay enrolled, but nothing to be proud of. Amanda, meanwhile, had changed jobs, and was now working as a senior software engineer at a major tech company. Her salary had jumped to $120,000, then $135,000. She bought a condo in Seattle, a sleek 2-bedroom with views of Puget Sound. When she invited me up to visit during my sophomore year, I felt a surge of bitterness as I walked through her modern, beautifully furnished home. "This must have cost a fortune," I said, trying to sound casual but unable to hide my resentment. "I worked hard for it," Amanda replied, smiling as she poured me a glass of wine. "But I'm just grateful I can help the family and still have something for myself." Help the family. The phrase grated on me. What about me? I was family too, but I didn't have a fancy condo or a 6-figure salary. I had a cramped apartment near campus, a part-time job that barely covered my beer money, and a growing sense that life wasn't fair. It was during that visit that Amanda introduced me to her boyfriend, Derek Torres. He was a systems architect at another tech firm, handsome and confident, with an easy smile and the kind of relaxed demeanor that came from never having to worry about money. His parents owned a successful restaurant chain in California, and he'd grown up comfortably, not wealthy, but never struggling. I disliked him immediately. So you're the famous Marcus, Derek said, shaking my hand warmly. Amanda talks about you all the time. She's so proud of you. Proud of what? I wanted to ask. Proud that I was mediocre? Proud that I was coasting through college on her dime? Instead, I forced a smile and said, Yeah. Well, someone has to be the family screw-up, right? Amanda laughed, thinking I was joking, but Derek's eyes flickered with something. Understanding, maybe, or pity. Whatever it was, it made me hate him more. Over the next few years, Derek became a fixture in our family. He came to Portland for holidays, helped Dad fix things around the house, and always brought thoughtful gifts. Mom loved him. Dad approved of him. Even my extended family thought he was great. But I couldn't stand him. Why? Because he represented everything I wasn't. He was successful on his own merits, not because someone was bankrolling him. He was confident without being arrogant. He treated Amanda like an equal partner, not like a bank account. And worst of all, he seemed to genuinely care about her happiness, which meant he saw through the family dynamics I'd grown comfortable with. Amanda and Derek got engaged during my senior year of college. They'd been together for 4 years, and the proposal was everything you'd expect from Derek. Thoughtful, romantic, perfect. He took her to Crater Lake in southern Oregon, got down on one knee at sunrise, and presented her with a beautiful sapphire ring, because Amanda had always said she found diamonds too conventional. When she called to tell us, I was in my apartment nursing a hangover from the night before. "Marcus, I'm getting married," she said, her voice bubbling with joy. "Congratulations," I mumbled, my head pounding. "That's great, sis, but it wasn't great." It was threatening. Because if Amanda got married, if she started her own family, what would happen to me? I was months away from graduating with a degree I'd barely earned and no job prospects. I was still living on her money. She'd just paid my rent for the month, plus sent me $400 for expenses I'd claimed I needed. Mom and Dad's reaction was lukewarm at best. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, but her tone was flat. "We're happy for you." Dad was more direct. "Marriage is expensive," he told her. "Don't expect us to chip in. The shop's barely breaking even." Amanda laughed it off. "Don't worry, Dad. Derek and I are paying for everything ourselves." But that wasn't entirely true. Over the next few months, as Amanda and Derek planned their wedding, the requests started coming. First, it was Mom asking for $800 to fix the shop's air compressor. "We can't afford to lose business," she explained. Amanda paid it. Then it was Dad needing well and $200 for back taxes. Amanda covered it. Then it was me, asking for $600 to cover some credit card debt I'd racked up. "Marcus, you need to start being more responsible," Amanda said when I called to ask. But she sent the money anyway. The wedding was set for June, a year after the engagement. Amanda and Derek were planning a modest ceremony for about 150 guests at a beautiful venue outside Seattle, an elegant barn surrounded by gardens overlooking the mountains. They'd budgeted $25,000, all from their own savings, and were doing most of the planning themselves to keep costs down. I was asked to be a groomsman. "Derek really wants you involved," Amanda told me. "He thinks of you as family." I agreed, but only half-heartedly. The truth was, I was jealous of their happiness, resentful of their success, and increasingly angry at the life I'd built for myself, or failed to build. As the wedding approached, my parents' financial situation worsened. The auto shop was facing increased competition from chain repair stores, and their customer base had dwindled. Dad talked about closing down, and Mom would cry at the kitchen table, worried about what they'd do. Amanda tried to help. She sent more money, $1,000 one month, $500 the next. She offered to help them hire a business consultant to turn things around. But instead of gratitude, I noticed a growing sense of expectation. It wasn't "thank you" anymore. It was "we need more." And then there was me. I'd graduated college with my mediocre degree and no real plan. I'd applied to a few jobs half-heartedly, gone to a couple of interviews I'd bombed, and mostly spent my days playing video games and going out with friends. Amanda was still covering my rent, $900 a month for a studio apartment I rarely cleaned, plus sending me spending money. "Marcus, you need to get serious about finding work," she told me during one phone call, 6 months before the wedding. "I am serious," I lied. "The job market is tough. Maybe I could help you with your resume? Or connect you with some people in Portland?" I bristled at the offer. "I don't need your connections, Amanda. I can figure it out myself." But I didn't figure it out. Instead, I grew more resentful. Here was my sister, planning her perfect wedding to her perfect fiancé, living her perfect life, while I was stuck in a dead-end situation of my own making. And the worst part? I blamed her for it. In my twisted logic, Amanda's success made my failure more obvious. If she weren't so accomplished, no one would notice that I was drifting. If she weren't so generous, I wouldn't feel so dependent. If she weren't getting married, I wouldn't feel so left behind. 3 months before the wedding, I asked Amanda for a new car. My old one, the one she'd bought me years ago, was running fine, but I wanted something nicer. "Everyone at Derek's work has fancy cars," I told her. "I don't want to look like a loser at your wedding." There was a long pause on the phone. "Marcus, that's not a good reason to buy a car. And I think it's time you start covering your own expenses," I exploded. "Are you serious? After everything I've done for this family? After all the times I've been there for you?" Another pause, longer this time. "Marcus, what exactly have you done for the family?" I couldn't answer. I hung up on her, seething with rage that was really just shame in disguise. Mom called me later that day. "Your sister told me what happened." "Marcus, that wasn't fair. Amanda has done so much for you." "Whatever," I muttered. "She's got plenty of money. She can spare it." "That's not the point," Mom said, but her voice was uncertain. "Although, we could use a new car too. Maybe you could talk to her again? Be nicer about it?" And that's when I realized my parents were enabling my behavior. They'd been doing it my whole life, treating Amanda like an ATM while treating me like the precious child who could do no wrong. The final 3 months before the wedding were a minefield of tension. Amanda had stopped sending me regular money, though she was still covering my rent until I got on my feet. She'd also reduced what she was sending our parents, telling them they needed to make some hard decisions about the shop. Dad was furious. "After everything we've done for you," he said to her during a tense family dinner at their house, "we raised you, gave you a home, and this is how you repay us?" "Dad, I've sent you thousands of dollars over the years," Amanda replied, her voice strained. "I want to help, but I can't keep covering everything. I have my own life now, my own family starting." "Your own family," Mom echoed bitterly. "So we're not your family anymore?" I watched this exchange with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. Part of me was glad to see Amanda uncomfortable, to see her challenged for once. But another part, a smaller part I tried to ignore, recognized that what my parents were saying was unfair. Derek was there too, sitting quietly beside Amanda, his hand occasionally touching her arm in support. When Dad turned his anger toward him, "Maybe your rich boyfriend can help us out," Derek responded calmly. "Robert, with all due respect, Amanda has been incredibly generous with everyone. But it's not sustainable and it's not healthy. Maybe it's time to consider other options for the shop." Dad's face turned red. "Who the hell do you think you are, coming into my house and telling me what to do?" "Derek's just trying to help," Amanda said quietly, but her voice was shaking. I should have defended her. Instead, I said, "He's got a point, though. Derek's family knows about business. Maybe you should listen." Amanda shot me a grateful look. But it quickly faded when I added, "Although, it's easy to give advice when you've never struggled." Derek's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Amanda's eyes, however, told me everything. I'd hurt her again, and this time I'd done it in front of everyone. The next few weeks were filled with wedding preparations that I participated in grudgingly. I went to the tux fitting Derek had organized, complained about the style, and made jokes about how fancy everything was. When Amanda asked me to give a speech at the reception, I agreed, but made no effort to prepare anything meaningful. "You're important to me, Marcus," she said when she asked. "I want you to be part of this day." "Yeah, sure," I replied, barely looking up from my phone. I could feel our relationship crumbling, but I couldn't stop myself. The resentment had built up for so long, years of jealousy, of feeling inadequate, of being the lesser sibling, that it had calcified into something hard and ugly. And I was about to let it explode in the worst possible way. 1 week before the wedding, I lost my apartment. I'd been fired from a part-time job I'd barely showed up for, and without Amanda's money, which she'd stopped sending 2 months prior, I couldn't make rent. My landlord gave me 3 days to vacate. I called Amanda in a panic. "I need help. I'm about to be homeless. Marcus, I'll help you find a place, but I'm not paying your rent anymore. You need to figure this out." "This is unbelievable," I shouted. "Your wedding is in a week and you're going to let your brother be homeless?" "You're not going to be homeless. Mom and Dad have room. I'm not living with them. I'm 28 years old." "Then get a job, any job." "Marcus, I love you, but I can't keep doing this. I've given you everything, and you've done nothing to help yourself." "You're abandoning me," I said, my voice cold, "right when I need you most." "I'm not abandoning you. I'm trying to help you grow up." I hung up on her for the second time in 3 months. That night, I stewed in my anger. I moved my stuff into my parents' garage, sleeping on an air mattress surrounded by old car parts and tools. Mom tried to comfort me, telling me Amanda was being selfish, that she'd forgotten where she came from. Dad agreed, saying Derek had probably convinced her to cut us off. "She's changed," Dad said. "Money changes people." I wanted to believe them. I needed to believe them, because the alternative, that I was the problem, that I'd wasted every opportunity Amanda had given me, was too painful to accept. The night before the wedding, I got drunk. Really drunk? I sat in a dingy bar in Portland, downing beer after beer, replaying every slight, every moment I'd felt overlooked or undervalued. By the time I stumbled back to my parents' garage at 2 a.m., I'd convinced myself of a narrative. Amanda had always looked down on me, had always thought she was better, and tomorrow, at her fancy wedding with her fancy fiancé and their fancy friends, she'd be showing off while I was the family embarrassment. I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth about Saint Amanda. The morning of the wedding, I woke up hungover and angry. Mom tried to get me to eat breakfast, but I brushed her off. Dad gave me a pep talk about family sticking together, which I interpreted as permission for what I was planning, though I hadn't fully articulated it even to myself. The ceremony was at 3 p.m. I arrived late, stumbling into the venue at 2:45, still smelling like last night's beer. The barn had been transformed into something magical. String lights draped from the rafters, flowers everywhere, elegant place settings. Amanda had clearly put her heart into this. I found my place with the other groomsmen, avoiding eye contact with Derek and his friends. During the ceremony, I watched Amanda walk down the aisle in her beautiful dress, a simple, elegant gown that suited her perfectly. She was glowing, genuinely happy, and for a moment, I felt a pang of something that might have been regret. But then I looked at the guests, Derek's colleagues from the tech world, Amanda's friends from college and work, people who looked successful and put together, and my resentment came roaring back. These were her people now. She'd left us behind. The reception started smoothly. Dinner was served, speeches were made. I'd mumbled through mine, saying something generic about sibling bonds, and Amanda and Derek had their first dance. They looked perfect together, and that perfection felt like an accusation. I started drinking. Heavily. By 8 p.m., I was several glasses of wine deep and looking for trouble. I don't remember deciding to do it. One moment I was sitting at my table, glaring at the happy couple, and the next I was on my feet, weaving through the crowd toward where Amanda stood talking to some guests. "Marcus," she said, smiling when she saw me. "Are you okay?" "Am I okay?" I repeated, my voice loud enough that people started turning. "That's rich coming from you," her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" I laughed, harsh and bitter. "What's wrong is that you're standing here in your expensive dress, at your expensive wedding, acting like you're so much better than everyone else." The nearby conversations died. Derek appeared at Amanda's side, his expression wary. "Marcus, maybe we should talk outside." "Don't tell me what to do," I snapped at him. "This is between me and my sister. My sister who thinks she's too good for her own family now." "Marcus, please," Amanda said, her voice shaking. "Don't do this." Not here, but I was beyond stopping. Years of resentment came pouring out in a torrent of words. "You want to know what it's been like, Amanda? Being your brother? Living in your shadow? You're so perfect, so successful, so generous. Saint Amanda, giving her money to the poor, struggling family. Well, guess what? We're sick of your charity." The crowd had gone completely silent. I saw Mom and Dad at a nearby table, their faces pale. "I never asked for your charity," I continued, my voice rising. "I never asked you to pay for everything, to lord your success over us, to make us feel like failures." "I never," Amanda started, but I cut her off. "You did! Every time you sent money, every time you helped, you were saying, 'Look at me, look at how much better I am than you.' Well, congratulations, Amanda. You won. You're better than all of us." My vision was blurring. Whether from alcohol or tears, I wasn't sure. I grabbed a glass of wine from a nearby table. Later, people would say I was aiming for Derek. But I honestly don't remember. And before anyone could stop me, I flung it. The red wine arced through the air in slow motion, splattering across Amanda's white dress. The crimson stains spread like blood, and Amanda gasped, looking down in shock. The room erupted. Derek stepped in front of Amanda, his face furious. "What the hell is wrong with you?" But I wasn't done. I lurched toward the dessert table, an elaborate display of cakes and pastries that had probably cost thousands of dollars. "This," I shouted, gesturing wildly. "This is what I think of your perfect wedding." I shoved the table. It was heavier than I expected, but momentum and adrenaline won out. The whole thing crashed to the floor, sending cakes, pastries, and decorative flowers flying. Guests jumped back, some screaming, others frozen in shock. "This is what you get," I yelled at Amanda, who was standing there with wine-soaked dress and tears streaming down her face. "This is what you get for acting like you're better than us." Security guards were suddenly there, grabbing my arms, dragging me away. I fought them briefly, then went limp. As they pulled me toward the exit, I saw my parents. They were standing now, Mom's hand over her mouth, Dad looking torn. And then Dad did something that, in hindsight, sealed all our fates. He called out, "He's just upset, Amanda." "You know he didn't mean it." Mom nodded vigorously. "You're being too harsh on him. He's been going through a lot." Even in my drunken state, I saw Amanda's face change. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was recognition, understanding, betrayal. I woke up the next morning in my parents' garage with the worst hangover of my life and a series of urgent text messages. Most were from friends who'd seen social media posts about the wedding disaster. A few were from Derek's groomsmen, telling me I was a disgrace. One was from Derek himself. "Stay away from Amanda. Stay away from both of us." There was nothing from Amanda. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen when I stumbled inside, looking for coffee and aspirin. They exchanged glances as I sat down. "That was quite a scene last night," Dad finally said. "I barely remember it," I lied. "Well," Mom said carefully, "Amanda called this morning." My heart jumped. "What did she say?" "She's very upset. She said—" Mom trailed off, looking at Dad for support. "She said she's done," Dad finished. "Done sending money, done helping out, done with all of us. She's cutting us off completely." The words hit me like cold water, burning away the last of my drunk bravado. "What do you mean, cutting us off?" "I mean she's not answering our calls, she blocked our numbers, and she sent an email saying she won't be providing any more financial support to anyone in the family. Not you, not us, not anyone." I stared at them, the reality of what I'd done starting to sink in. "She can't do that." "She can, and she did," Dad said, his voice hard. "Thanks to your little performance last night, we've lost our safety net." "My performance?" "You defended me. You said I was just upset." "Well, what were we supposed to do? You're our son, and she's your daughter. She's been keeping us afloat for years, and you sided with me?" The argument spiraled from there, accusations flying in all directions. But the truth was inescapable. I had destroyed Amanda's wedding day, and in doing so, I'd destroyed whatever remained of our family bonds. The weeks and months that followed were brutal. Without Amanda's financial support, my parents' auto shop collapsed within 3 months. They couldn't make rent on the building, couldn't afford parts, couldn't compete with the chain stores. Dad had to file for bankruptcy, and they lost everything: the shop, their modest savings, even their house. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a rougher part of Portland, bitter and broken. They blamed Amanda for abandoning them, for choosing her new family over her real one. But late at night, I'd hear Mom crying, saying things like, "We shouldn't have let Marcus do that," and "How did we raise such an entitled boy?" As for me, I hit rock bottom fast. With no job, no education I'd actually applied myself to, and a viral video of my wedding outburst making the rounds on social media, I couldn't find decent work anywhere. I ended up working at a gas station, making $12 an hour and living in the cramped apartment with my parents, sleeping on the couch. I tried to reach out to Amanda, desperate. Drunken messages at 2 a.m., sober apologies sent via email, even a handwritten letter I mailed to her Seattle address. All of it went unanswered. Derek's friends, who knew people in Portland, made sure everyone in the local tech scene knew what I'd done. My reputation was destroyed before I'd ever had a chance to build one. One day, about 6 months after the wedding, I saw Amanda and Derek in Portland. I was on my break from the gas station, walking to get a burrito, when I spotted them coming out of a nice restaurant downtown. Derek had his arm around Amanda, and they were laughing about something. Amanda looked different, lighter somehow, despite everything that had happened. Or maybe because of it. I froze, half hidden behind a bus stop, watching them. They got into a nice car and drove away, never seeing me. That's when it really hit me. Amanda was fine. Better than fine. She'd cut out the toxic elements of her life. Me, our parents, all the weight she'd been carrying, and she was thriving. Meanwhile, I was working at a gas station, living with our angry, broke parents, with no prospects and no future. It took almost a year before I could fully confront what I'd done. A year of therapy sessions I could barely afford, of working dead-end jobs, of watching my parents grow more bitter and resentful. A year of looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person staring back. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, finally got me to break down during one session. "Marcus, tell me what you're really angry about," she said. "I'm angry that Amanda abandoned us," I started, but even as the words came out, I knew they were hollow. "Did she abandon you? Or did you drive her away?" I couldn't answer. I just cried, ugly, painful tears that had been building for years. "You're not angry at Amanda," Dr. Chen said gently. "You're angry at yourself, and you've been taking it out on the one person who never deserved it." She was right. I'd spent my whole life being jealous of Amanda's success instead of being inspired by it. I'd taken her generosity for granted, then resented her for giving it. I'd built a narrative where I was the victim and she was the villain, when the truth was exactly the opposite. Amanda had sacrificed her teenage years to keep our family afloat. She'd worked multiple jobs so I could play baseball. She'd sent money home from college so I could have new clothes. She'd paid my tuition, my rent, my expenses, asking for nothing in return except maybe some basic respect and appreciation. And what had I given her? Resentment, jealousy. And finally, on what should have been the happiest day of her life, humiliation. 18 months after the wedding, I wrote Amanda a letter. Not the rambling, self-pitying messages I'd sent before, but a real letter, taking full accountability for everything I'd done. "Dear Amanda," it began, "I know you probably won't read this and I understand why, but I need to say these things, even if only for myself. I destroyed your wedding day. I ruined what should have been a beautiful celebration because I was jealous, entitled, and cruel. I threw your generosity back in your face because I couldn't stand looking at my own failures. You gave me everything, opportunities, support, unconditional love, and I treated it like it was my right instead of the gift it was. You worked multiple jobs as a teenager so I could be a kid. You sent money from college so I could have things I wanted. You paid for my entire education, and I barely even tried. And instead of being grateful, instead of trying to be worthy of your sacrifices, I blamed you for my own inadequacies. I convinced myself that your success somehow made me a failure, when the truth is that my failures were entirely my own doing. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking you to respond to this letter or to ever speak to me again. I just want you to know that I finally understand what I had, what you gave me, and what I threw away. You deserved a sister who celebrated your achievements, not one who resented them. You deserved a family who appreciated your sacrifices, not one who demanded more. You deserved to have your wedding day be perfect, and I stole that from you. I'm sorry, Amanda, for everything. I hope you're happy. I hope Derek treats you the way you deserve to be treated. And I hope someday, even if it's years from now, you can think about me without feeling anger or pain. I love you. I always have, even when I was too broken to show it. Your brother Marcus, I mailed the letter to her office address. I'd found it through LinkedIn, which she hadn't blocked. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. But writing it helped me accept something important. Amanda didn't owe me anything. Not forgiveness, not another chance, not even acknowledgement of my apology. She'd given me enough. More than enough. A lifetime's worth of patience, support, and love. And I'd wasted it all. It's been 3 years since the wedding. 3 years of living with the consequences of my actions, of slowly rebuilding a life from the rubble I created. I'm 31 now, and I barely recognize the person I was at 28. I still work at the gas station. Though I've been promoted to assistant manager, a small victory that once would have felt insulting, but now feels like progress. I'm taking night classes at Portland Community College, starting over with my education, actually applying myself this time. My GPA is a 3.8. Nobody's paying for it but me through student loans and the money I scraped together from my job. It's hard. It's exhausting. And it's exactly what I need. I moved out of my parents' apartment 8 months ago. I couldn't take their bitterness anymore, the constant of blame and resentment. They still talk about Amanda like she's the villain in this story, like she betrayed us by refusing to enable our dysfunction any longer. I used to agree with them. Now I see it for what it is: deflection, an inability to take responsibility for our own choices. I live in a studio apartment in a rough part of town. It's small, the water pressure is terrible, and my neighbors are loud. But it's mine. I pay for it with money I earned, and that means something. My relationship with my parents is strained. We talk maybe once a month, brief calls where we carefully avoid discussing Amanda or the past. Dad's working as a mechanic at one of those chain stores he used to complain about. Mom works retail. They're getting by, barely, but they're managing without Amanda's money. It turns out they could survive on their own. They just never had to before. Sometimes I wonder if cutting them off was the best thing Amanda ever did for them, even if they'll never see it that way. About 6 months ago, I broke one of my own rules. I was having a particularly rough day, got passed over for a promotion, my car broke down, just one of those days where everything feels impossible, and I found myself searching for Amanda on social media. Her Instagram was public. Though she'd blocked my personal account years ago, I created a fake profile just to look, which I'm not proud of, but desperation makes you do stupid things. What I saw gutted me. Amanda looked radiant. She and Derek had bought a house, a beautiful craftsman-style home with a garden. There were pictures of them hiking in the Cascades, visiting wineries, hosting dinner parties with friends. In one photo, she was laughing at something off camera, her head thrown back in genuine joy. And I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her laugh like that when we were growing up. Then I scrolled further and saw something that made my heart stop. A pregnancy announcement from 2 months ago. Baby Torres coming February 2025. The caption read, with a photo of Amanda and Derek holding a tiny pair of sneakers. The comments were full of congratulations, excitement, love from friends I didn't know she had. Amanda was going to be a mother, and I was going to be an uncle. Except I wasn't. Not really. Because uncles are people who are part of your life, who you invite to birthday parties and holidays. I was just a stranger who shared her DNA, someone she'd wisely cut out of her world. I stared at that photo for a long time, at Amanda's glowing face and Derek's protective hand on her shoulder, and I felt the full weight of what I'd lost. Not just a sister, but a future. I'd never meet my niece or nephew. I'd never be the cool uncle who teaches them to throw a baseball or helps with their homework. I'd never be part of Amanda's family, the one she was building with Derek. I'd destroyed that possibility when I threw that wine glass. 2 months after seeing Amanda's pregnancy announcement, I had a chance encounter that changed something in me. I was working an evening shift at the gas station when Derek walked in. I recognized him immediately, though he'd changed a bit. A little gray at the temples, laugh lines around his eyes. He didn't recognize me at first. Why would he? I was just the guy behind the counter in a gas station uniform, not the angry, drunk man who'd ruined his wedding. He grabbed some snacks and a bottle of water, came to the counter and pulled out his credit card. That's when his eyes met mine, really looked at me, and I saw the moment of recognition. "Marcus," he said. Not a question, just an acknowledgement. "Derek," I replied, my hands shaking as I scanned his items. "That'll be $8.47. He handed me his card, and we stood there in awkward silence while the transaction processed. I could feel my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to say something, apologize, explain, beg for information about Amanda, but my throat was closed. Derek took his receipt, picked up his items, and started to leave. But then he stopped at the door and turned back. "Are you doing okay, Marcus?" he asked. The question surprised me so much I almost couldn't answer. After everything I'd done, he was asking if I was okay? "I'm managing," I said finally. "Working. Going to school. Trying to be better?" He nodded slowly, studying me. "That's good. That's really good. How's Amanda?" I asked, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I heard she's pregnant. Congratulations." Derek's expression softened a bit. "She's doing great. We're excited. Little nervous, but excited. That's wonderful. She'll be an amazing mom." "Yeah, she will." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "Look, Marcus, I'm not going to pretend that what you did was okay. You really hurt Amanda in ways that took her a long time to get past." "I know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I know, and I'm so sorry." He held up a hand. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel worse. I'm telling you because I think you should know. Amanda's happy now. Really happy. She's built a life surrounded by people who appreciate her, who don't take her for granted. She's free from the weight she was carrying for so long. That's all I want for her," I said, and I meant it. Derek studied me for another moment. "I believe you. And I think if you'd figured that out 3 years ago, things might be different. But you can't change the past, Marcus. You can only choose who you want to be going forward." "I'm trying," I said. "Every day I'm trying," he nodded. "That's all anyone can do." He turned to leave again, then paused once more. "Marcus, for what it's worth, Amanda doesn't hate you. She's not sitting around angry or bitter. She's just moved on. She's at peace." "Good," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "That's good." And then he was gone, the door chiming behind him, leaving me standing there with a line of impatient customers and a heart full of complicated emotions. That encounter with Derek stayed with me for weeks. The fact that Amanda was at peace, that she'd moved on, that she was happy, it should have made me feel better. And in a way, it did. But it also drove home just how completely I'd burned that bridge. I started going to therapy more regularly, really committing to the work of understanding how I'd become the person who would do what I did. Dr. Chen helped me unpack years of entitlement, jealousy, and misdirected anger. "You grew up in a family system where you were centered," she explained during one session. "Your needs, your wants, your feelings, they always came first. Amanda's role was to provide, to sacrifice, to make things possible. Your parents reinforced that dynamic constantly, but I didn't have to buy into it. I said. I could have chosen to be different. Yes, she agreed. And that's the hard truth you're facing now. You had agency. You made choices. But understanding the system that shaped those choices can help you make different ones going forward. We talked about my jealousy of Amanda's success and how it was really a projection of my own shame. You felt like a failure, Dr. Chen said, but instead of using Amanda's success as inspiration to change your own life, you resented her for making your failures more visible. She was right. Amanda's accomplishments had been a mirror showing me everything I wasn't. And instead of looking at that reflection and deciding to become better, I'd tried to break the mirror. The tragedy, Dr. Chen said gently, is that Amanda would have been your biggest cheerleader if you'd ever tried. She would have celebrated your successes no matter how small because she loved you. But you never gave her the chance. It wasn't just Amanda I'd lost. The fallout from the wedding had cost me other relationships too. My few close friends from high school, the ones who'd known Amanda and seen how much she did for our family, had gradually distanced themselves from me. They'd seen the viral video, heard the stories, and decided they didn't want to be associated with that kind of person. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, who I'd been dating casually before the wedding, broke up with me 2 weeks after the incident. I can't be with someone who would do that to their sister, she'd said. It shows a side of you that scares me. Even my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, had chosen sides, and most had chosen Amanda. I didn't blame them. At family gatherings I was no longer invited to, I heard through my parents that Amanda was thriving, that Derek's family had embraced her completely, that she'd built this whole beautiful life. My parents complained bitterly about being excluded from that life, about not being invited to baby showers or family dinners, but I noticed they never acknowledged their own role in that exclusion. They'd sided with me that night, had defended the indefensible, and Amanda had drawn a line. She's keeping our grandchild from us, Mom would sob. How can she be so cruel? But it wasn't cruelty. It was self-preservation. Amanda was protecting her child from the dysfunction that had marked her own childhood, from the favoritism and the expectations and the conditional love. She was breaking the cycle, even if it meant breaking ties with us. I wished I could make my parents see that. But they were too invested in their victim narrative, too committed to believing that Amanda was the problem rather than examining their own behavior. So I stopped trying to convince them and focused on my own growth instead. February 2025 came and went, and I found myself wondering if Amanda had her baby. I didn't check social media this time. I'd deleted my fake account, recognizing that checking up on her was just another form of entitlement, another way of inserting myself into her life without permission. But I thought about her often. I wondered if she'd had a boy or a girl, if the delivery went smoothly, if she was getting any sleep. I wondered if Derek was being supportive, though I knew he would be. He'd always been good to her, better than her own family had been. One night in early March, I was closing up the gas station when a customer came in, an older woman named Patricia who lived in my apartment building and often stopped by on her evening walks. "Marcus," she said, approaching the counter with a knowing smile. "I have to ask you something, and I hope you don't mind me being nosy." "What's up, Patricia? Is your sister Amanda Walsh? The one who works in tech up in Seattle?" My stomach dropped. "Yeah, why?" "I was at my book club today, and one of the women there mentioned that her daughter works with an Amanda Walsh who just had a baby girl. Beautiful, healthy, 8 pounds. And when she said the last name, I wondered if it might be your sister. A girl. Amanda had a daughter. Yeah, that's her," I managed to say. Patricia smiled. "Well, congratulations, Uncle Marcus." "How exciting." I forced a smile. "Thanks, Patricia." After she left, I sat behind the counter in the empty store and cried. Quiet tears that ran down my face and dripped onto the counter. My sister had a daughter, a little girl who would grow up knowing her parents loved her, who would have Derek's calm presence and Amanda's strength. A little girl who would never know her uncle, who would grow up hearing, if she heard anything at all, that her mom had a brother she didn't talk to anymore. I pulled out my phone and typed out a text to Amanda's old number, the one she'd probably changed years ago. "I heard you had a baby girl. Congratulations. I hope she has your strength and kindness. I hope she never knows what it's like to be taken for granted. I hope you're both healthy and happy. Love, Marcus." I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the send button. Then I deleted it. Amanda had made her boundaries clear. Respecting them was the least I could do, the only thing I could do to show her that I'd actually changed. It's now spring of 2025. 3 years since I ruined Amanda's wedding and lost my sister forever. I'm still working at the gas station, though I'm interviewing for a junior IT position at a small company next week. My community college courses are finally paying off. I'm still in therapy. I'm still sober, having realized that alcohol had been a catalyst for my worst behaviors. I'm still alone. No girlfriend, few friends, estranged from most of my family. But I'm no longer the person I was. I've learned the hard way, the expensive way, some lessons that I should have learned decades ago. Nobody owes you anything. Not your parents, not your siblings, not the world. Amanda didn't owe me her money, her support, her sacrifice. She chose to give those things out of love, and I treated that love like it was my right instead of her gift. Success isn't a zero-sum game. Amanda's achievements didn't diminish me. They never did. I could have celebrated her success and worked on my own. Instead, I let jealousy poison me and used her as an excuse for my own failures. Boundaries are love. When Amanda cut us off, my parents called it abandonment. But it wasn't. It was self-preservation. It was choosing health over dysfunction. It was breaking a cycle that would have destroyed her life and her new family. Actions have consequences. This one seems obvious, but I didn't really understand it until it was too late. I thought I could throw tantrums, make demands, hurt people, and there would always be another chance, always be forgiveness waiting. But some actions are unforgivable. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Change has to come from within. My parents are still bitter, still blaming Amanda for their problems, still talking about how they were wronged. They haven't changed because they don't think they need to. I'm changing, slowly, painfully, because I finally accepted that I was the problem. Sometimes, late at night, I write letters to Amanda that I'll never send. Letters where I tell her about my therapy breakthroughs, about the job I'm trying to get, about how I'm becoming the brother I should have been all along. Letters where I apologize again, differently, better, having understood more deeply what I did wrong. Tonight's letter goes like this. Dear Amanda, I know you'll never read this, and that's okay. These letters aren't really for you anyway. They're for me, a way of processing this grief and guilt. I heard through the grapevine that you had a daughter. I don't know her name, but I imagine it's beautiful, something meaningful that you and Derek chose together. I picture her with your eyes, your determination, your good heart. I think about what kind of uncle I could have been if I hadn't destroyed everything. I would have taught her to ride a bike, helped her with her math homework. I'm actually good at math now, if you can believe it. Been someone she could call when she was in trouble. I would have been the cool uncle who took her to baseball games and always had time to listen. But I lost that chance, and I have nobody to blame but myself. Retry.